like to take this opportunity to thank Malaysia HR Forum for organizing this AHRP program. I'm also very thankful for the chance to meet many wonderful like-minded people here throughout the program.
Okay, so I also remember about the advice from the CEO of Malaysia HR Forum, which is Mr. Kumar. He always says about AKS, attitude, knowledge and skill.
So first job, don't berkira-kira, work hard. The first 10 years of your working life, and what I've said the other day, the first 10 to 15 years of working life, it's all about hard work. So first job, grab what you can first, take it up, build your experience, build your competencies, learn the skills that you don't have today. The time will come when something will tell you that it is time to move on.
So you have to remember that having qualification doesn't really guarantee you a job, but it can land you with one. But for you to continue climbing the ladder, it's all about skills. And when we talk about skills, of course, not just soft skill, communication, writing, but relates to what you're doing.
What happened between that time until now? I never quit, never lie, and I never want to be somebody other than myself. So if you're a boring person, be boring. If you're an animated person, make sure that animation comes out. And if you're a person that is shy, so be it. The moment you lie, the moment you say you know things and you don't, that's when you won't get the job. At that rate, by the time you are 30, you're going to be having a salary of 7,000 ringgit. Congratulations. But 7,000 doesn't cut it in KL. Learn, continuously improve yourself. This AHRP paper is one of them. Continue to add stuff in your CV.
As a HR professional for many years, the AHRP program, the quality of candidate that we see today, they are well equipped with the confidence, the knowledge and skills of HR, what is it to be a HR person, and all of them coming from other background.
I'm very thankful for Malaysia HR Forum by giving us this opportunity to interview some candidates that they have trained in a 5-day program, and they also filtered the candidates based on their own requirements. And I would say that this is a fresh batch of candidates for us to interview. So it was good, and in a couple of days we will shortlist some candidates and hopefully to organize a second interview with them.
When I first saw it, I thought it was a really good idea to bring candidates together with a specific specialization, which is why I wanted to participate, because I've got HR needs that I'm looking for. So it was a good platform for me to meet a good pool of candidates who have a certification that I can work. Some of them are meeting expectations. As an organization, I'm looking more towards the ability to communicate, looking at critical thinking, character and motivation of the people. So I think for the most part, I've met good people today.
Overall, it's a good experience to participate this HR Recruitment Day. And I think it's a very meaningful event that helps the fresh graduates out there to have the employment opportunity. Overall, I find the session very fruitful, and we managed to get a few good candidates, and we are going to shortlist for the second interview with our company.
Next up, we're going to have just a little presentation from the Malaysia HR Forum. All of y'all look up on the left. Let's go, ladies and gentlemen.
keen to establish a uniting platform for local and international delegates.
Must also be encouraged and inspired to make lifelong learning, which stands at 70.1% as of July this year.
1.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Arul, and thanks for joining us in the webinar today. But before I begin, do let me know if you're able to hear me, you're able to see me. If yes, give me a yes, right? Type in the chat box yes, so at least I know I'm not speaking to a dead wall, right? Are you able to hear me or see me? Okay, good. So thanks a lot. So welcome to another webinar edition organized by the Malaysia HR Forum. And today our topic is going to be on understanding the definition of wages, right? So I will share with you later what are the details. But before I begin, I would like to welcome once again all of you who are listening today. So this webinar is being telecast via Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube, right? And I would encourage all of you all, if you're new to Malaysia HR Forum, if you have never heard about this before, somebody send you the link to the webinar today, please ensure that you are a member of the HR Forum. It is a free membership. So you can see a QR code at the screen, scan the QR code, and you will be, there's 3 questions that you got to answer. And once you have done that, you're accepted, you will join over 50,000 members in the Malaysia HR Forum. Now, these 50,000 members are generally HR practitioners, business owners, like-minded people who are interested in HR. Now, I would encourage all of y'all to also get your team members, right? If you're a section head, if you're a HOD, get all your team members, including your younger members, your junior HR professionals, your section heads, etc., to join the community. Why? Because in the community, we discuss tons of issues and topics. It can be on employment law, it can be on IR, it can be on people management, it can be on engagement of employees, how do we motivate employees, it could be on compliance, talent development, etc. So I would encourage you to get them to join this group so that they can learn from the various discussion. The challenge about HR issues, not everything is black and white or objective, binary. It's either right or wrong, yes or no. Many of the HR issues we face today is very subjective. When we deal with people, it is not missionary. So we have got different attitude, different culture, different behavior, different needs, different wants. So in order for us to become a much more competent HR professional, one of the most effective method is to learn up as much as we can in terms of different scenarios. I noticed one trend among some HR practitioners. They only start to look for answers when they're in trouble. When there's a need, they have an issue, then they start looking for answers here, there, etc. Now, that is not the right way to learn. We got to learn even when the issues are not relevant to us today, right? So as a young professional, or if you're at mid-level, you got to keep on reading and learning, etc. So in the Facebook community, there will be members who ask, I've got this scenario in my company. What can I do? What should I do? I've done this. This does not work. What other methods we can do? How can I reward employees? How can I retain employees? What are the challenges in doing this? How have you done it? Right? So all these are being discussed, and this is one way to learn. Going for training, that's one method. But if we know training, the effectiveness of training, it's only 10%. A bigger chunk comes from on-the-job training. right? So I would encourage all of you all to get your HR team members, even your bosses, right, to join the community. We also share what are the latest news, what are the latest changes to the law, what is the ministry saying, what are those issues that is by, affecting companies, HR. So all these are being shared and discussed in the Facebook community. So please join us. And of course, when you join us, you'll get, documentation, templates, webinars like what we're doing today, seminars, there's policies, templates, forms, and many, many more. So do join us, and I'm sure you will find it valuable, that you don't want to miss it out. So before I begin, my name is Arul again. I know some of you all might know me. I do know quite a number of you all. So thanks a lot for joining us today. Now, a quick background about myself. I was also a HR practitioner, just like all of you all. I was in semiconductor industry. I was in rubber glove. I was in, technology. I was in training industry. So I've done my, service, right, in organizations. And I thought maybe it's time that I set up something on my own. I like to do training. I like to share, and I enjoy do what I'm doing today. So I have, over 22 years of experience in a couple of industries. Had a good run over the years working as a HR practitioner in recruitment, in business partner, to some extent in talent development, compliance, and many more. So I like to share on what I have, experience with. And the purpose of today's webinar is to help HR practitioners just like you to learn better on many aspects. So today's topic is on wages. What exactly is the definition of wages? Because this is one area I find many of us are not very familiar with. What is wages? What are not wages? What should I include when I calculate ORP? So those things. So we will discuss all of those today, right? If you need to contact me, my email address and my phone number is there. Now, by the way, these slides that I'm sharing with you today would be shared in Facebook group. So if you want a copy of these slides, you got to go to Facebook group after the after the webinar today, and you can download these slides, right? We will not be emailing it to you. You can download it from our Facebook community. Okay, so just before I begin, one slide that I keep repeating in all my webinars and seminars and trainings, so that this becomes a mantra, so we know and we can always remind our other colleagues, on this message, which it says, simply it says, if you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. So in other words, what it says is, when we comply with the law, it is cheaper. As compared to try not to follow the law, we try to find shortcuts, illegal shortcuts, try not to pay this, that, etc. That means we are not compliant. Now, when we are not compliant, it is going to be expensive, right? So compliance or non-compliance, which one would you choose? If we comply, it is not going to be easy because complying to the rules takes time, effort, you got to follow through, right? It is not easy and it takes time. But when we comply, we will be able to save or avoid future issues, whether it's with the authorities, whether it's with the employees, and so on. But when we choose shortcut, illegal shortcut, especially when we try not to follow, etc., when we get into trouble, then we talk about fines from the authority, we talk about, loss of revenue, there's an effect on your brand. Just imagine, if your company have done something wrong, and then it appears in the newspaper saying that this particular company, XYZ company, has committed to this or failed to do this, etc. And all the years of brand building, right? We spend so much effort and time to build our company brand, and within seconds, within a matter of seconds or minutes, that reputation that you've built, right, will be affected. So if you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. I give you one example. Let's say if it's, at 9:30 in the morning, you want to have a quick breakfast and you park your car on the roadside, you make a quick dash to the restaurant to have your meal. After 20 minutes, you're back to your car, you realize there's a summon. Now, we were not compliant. If we were compliant, it takes less than a minute to, to take out your phone, switch on the app, put your digital parking coupon. And it only costs 60 cents. It takes less than 1 minute and 60 cents. But because we choose not to be compliant, the fine now is going to be 10, 20, 40, 60, 100, whatever that your town council imposes on you, right? And to pay the summon, it probably take you more than 1 minute, probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and so on. So compliance is cheaper and faster. Non-compliance is more expensive and takes a longer time. Plus, damage to your reputation, affects your brand, your customers may withdraw because they, some clients, some of your customers, they may not want to work with an organization that is irresponsible, that do not follow rules, that do not follow laws, right? So ethics and integrity is important. Not just, putting it on paper and say that, oh, we believe in this, we are ethical, we are transparent, etc. But we make this kind of mistakes, right? So I would encourage all of y'all, when you are doing your HR presentation, run through this one slide before you start your presentation and make this as a mantra in your organization. Okay, so now let me go into the topic of wages. Now, I'm sure many of y'all would have seen this table. So February 2025, which is last month, the beginning of last month, the minimum wage has increased from 1,005 to 1,007. Right? It says minimum wage order 2024, which is true. It is not minimum wages order 2025 because the order was made last year. That is why it's 2024. But the implementation is on 1st Feb 2025. Right? So the minimum wages order 2024 has increased the minimum wage from 1,005 to 1,007. So some of y'all would be paying your employees either on monthly, right? That means you pay them a monthly salary. I'm sure many of y'all, if you're in HR, you are paid on monthly, I believe. So if you're monthly salary, the minimum salary has got to be 1,700, right? Which includes Saturdays, Sundays, public holidays, etc. Right? Your off day, rest day, public holiday, 1,007. But some employees, for example, in production environment, in some services environment, they may be paid on a daily rate, right? So if the employee is working 6 days a week, the minimum daily rate has got to be 65.38. So if they're working on 5 days per week, then it has got to be 78.46. And if they're working 4 days a week, it has got to be 98.08. And in a month, when you calculate the number of days multiplied by this amount, right, it has got to reach a minimum of 1,700. It cannot be less. If the employee was absent, yes, the payment will be lesser. But if the employee has come to work all days, then he or she is entitled to 1,700. Now, some organizations, they would be employing, their employees on hourly rate. For example, if it's a part-timer, right? Or in some industries, retail, for example. Now, if it's going to be hourly, the minimum hourly rate has got to be 8.72. So how do we arrive with these numbers? We have put a little bit of illustration at the bottom, how these numbers was arrived. So 8.72 is the hourly rate. So if you're employing somebody on hours and he works 8 hours per day, then it has got to be 8 times 8.72, right? So that's how these numbers are, that's how this hourly rate works. Now, I'm also quite sure there could be certain organizations, for example, in the palm oil industry, they would pay their, those guys who pick up the fruits on piece rated, or it can be tonnage. Some of the truck drivers, those cement truck drivers, they are paid on trip. You perform one trip, you're paid X amount, right? So EA says this, that employee can be paid on monthly, daily, hourly, piece rated, tonnage, task, trip, commission. So that is just a mechanism of pay. Now, irrespective of which mechanism used, be it monthly, daily, hourly, piece rated, tonnage, trip, task, or commission, the minimum wages that this employee has to earn or should be earning, it's 1,700, right? So to know more on how do we pay someone on commission, right? How does the structure work based on commission? How does structure work if we pay them based on piece rated? I would encourage you to go to Facebook community. There's 2 write-ups, and this write-up is done by Haji Hussein, who's an ex-retired labor director. So Haji Hussein and myself, we wrote this document to give you much more detail on how piece rated works and how commission-based mechanism works. So if you're interested, go to Facebook community, download these 2 documents and read it. Unfortunately, I won't be able to share it today because it takes a lot of time, but read it and you'll find it useful, right? So whether they are paid on monthly, hourly, daily, or piece rated tonnage task trip commission, they will need to be paid 1,700 at the minimum. You can pay more, but it cannot be less. That is why it is called minimum wages, right? Minimum. Similar to retirement, Minimum Retirement Age Act says that an employee, cannot be retired. That means if you want to retire somebody, it has got to be minimum 60. You can set it at 61 because it did not say maximum. The act is not maximum retirement age. It says minimum retirement age. So it has got to be minimum 60. Cannot retire somebody at 59. 60 is okay. 60 is minimum. It can be. You can also have it at 61, 62, 63, whatever the age that you want. So similarly, for minimum wages, it has got to be minimum 17, right? And this 1,700 minimum wage applies to all states, including Sabah, including Sarawak. So Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah, Sarawak. So all states, all localities, minimum has got to be 1,007. Unlike in the past, where they follow based on location. So this time round, it is standard across board. And so when we look at definition of wages, right, I'll come back to minimum wage in a short while. So when we look at definition of wages, wages means basic wages, right? Maybe let me go back. I missed one point. So on 1st of February, every company, all companies in Malaysia, you will need to pay 1,700. However, companies that has less than 5, in other words, if your number of employees 1, 2, 3, 4, if you have less than 5 and you're not listed in MESCO's categorization, you can defer, right? You can defer the minimum wage to 1st of August 2025, right? But companies with 5 people or more, and if you're listed in MESCO, irrespective of the number of employees that you have, then you got to start on 1st February 2025. So what is the definition of wages? Now, when we look at Employment Act, then you also got to look at EPF Act, right? It's two different acts. Labor Department administers Employment Act, EPF administers EPF Act, and then you also have Perkeso, they have their own act, HRDF have their own act, right? So these 4 authorities, Perkeso, JTK, HRDF and EPF, they have their relevant acts. So I've put all the acts here. But interestingly, it is quite similar. If you look at the act, it's quite similar. So let's look at Employment Act 1955, Section 2. It says wages, right? When we say wages, includes basic salary or basic wages, gaji pokok, right? Basic wages and all other payments in cash, whatever that you pay the employees in cash. When we say in cash, it's not necessarily you're paying them in cash. When you pay this money through their bank account, it is considered cash. So wages means basic wages and all other payments in cash that you pay to an employee for work done, but does not include, right? So when we say wages, everything is included except A, the value of any house, or if you supply them food. Meal allowance is an allowance that you pay. But when you supply food, there's no allowances involved here. So it's two different things. So value of any house or food, fuel, light, water, or medical attendance, etc. Now, this is not included. If we are paying for pension fund, like for example, contribution to EPF, that is not wages. Traveling allowance is not wages, but transport, yes. So traveling and transport is two different things, right? I'll share with you in a subsequent slide what is the difference between a traveling allowance and transport allowance. So that is excluded. If the company is paying any sum to the employee because of certain expenses that he or she would incur to perform the job, right? That is not included because it's an expense. Gratuity, for example, if you're going to retire somebody, you're going to pay them some form of appreciation. We call it gratuity, not included, or bonuses. So as far as EA is concerned, everything else is wages, except A, B, C, D, E, F. Right? To know more, please visit. I'll share the links with you later when you get these slides. Go to Section 2 of Employment Act. You will see this definition, this description. Now, when we look at EPF Act, right, EPF Act is very similar, right? Wages means all remuneration, whatever that you pay the employee in money, right? That means you pay them through either cash or through the bank. So wages means remuneration in money that you pay the employee or even an apprentice, right? If the employee has a contract of service or apprentice, whether you pay them on monthly, weekly, daily, or otherwise, right? And EPF Act includes bonuses, commissions, allowance, right? So you'll see certain differences there. For EA, bonuses are not, but if you see EPF, bonuses are in, right? Bonuses, commission, allowance, right? All these are included, except, so what is not included? A, service charge. For example, in a hotel, they pay the employee service charge. That is not included. Overtime payment is not included. Gratuity is not included. Retirement benefit is not included. Or, if you're going to retrench somebody, there's a termination benefit payable. That is not included. Traveling allowance is not included. So similar to EA, traveling allowance is not included. Or if there's any other allowances that has been exempted by the minister, right? That is also not included, or shall I say exempted, right? So this is what is exempted in EPF. So it's good if you can investigate for yourself through the link that I've shared at the bottom. Let's look at EIS. So EIS says that, so again, remember this, EPF Act only talks about EPF. EA talks about EA. Perkeso is for, SOCSO's Act is for SOCSO, right? So EI, SOCSO, they are under the same ministry, which is under Human Resource Ministry, same agency. So let's look at what EIS says. EIS says that wages means all remuneration paid by an employee, right? Includes in respect of leave, holidays, overtime, extra work, but it does not include, right? That means what is excluded? A, contribution to pension fund, for example, contribution to EPF. Traveling allowance is excluded. If you're going to pay an employee for any expenses they've incurred to perform the job, that is not included. Gratuity or discharge or retirement, annual bonus is not included. If there's any other benefits written by any law, right, under written law by the organization, or any other remuneration that is prescribed by EIS. So these are A, B, C, D, E, F, G is not included. SOCSO, what is not included? Again, you can see any contribution payable by the principal or the immediate to any pension fund, right? The company is paying for a pension fund, that's not included. Traveling allowance not included. Any sum that you pay to employee because they've incurred expenses. Some of the jobs that we do, right, the moment we travel, there's a cost and company pays, that is not an income, right? So traveling allowance not included, or any other expenses that employee need to incur, that is not included. Gratuity, on discharge or retirement. When you retire somebody, you pay them some form of payment for retirement, that is not included. Bonuses or any other remuneration as may be prescribed by the Act. So these are not included. So you can see a little bit of similarity, right, in these 4 Acts. So I would encourage all of you all to download this Act and do your comparison for yourself. Now, listening to me is one way of learning, or asking around is one way of learning. But one of the better way to learn is, once you've listened to whoever that has shared the knowledge, download this Act and read for yourself, investigate the truth for yourself, compare the 4 Acts, do up your own assessment, understand better, right? Not just listening to somebody. What if I'm not telling you the truth? What if I'm, not giving you the real picture, right? So do not take this webinar as a gospel truth, but take this as the first step for you to learn and independently do your own research to understand better. So let's look at definition of wages in section 2 and the first schedule. So first schedule, when you look at Employment Act, you go to the back, somewhere at the back, you can see the definition of wages in first schedule. Now, this is to determine, right? Remember the 4,000 ringgit that you all are familiar with? What is the component of that 4,000 in order to determine whether this employee is entitled to overtime or not, right? So that is in first schedule. Whereas in section 2, it talks about wages for the purpose of paying overtime, right? For the purpose of determining their, annual leave encashment and so on. So that is in section 2. So let me repeat again so that we understand better. So Section 2 defines wages as basic wages and all other payments in cash for work done, right? But does not include item A, B, C, D, E, F. So you can see there, traveling allowance is not included, and any sum that you pay to the employee to defray, that means to offset any expenses they may have incurred, that is also not included. Got it? Now, if you have any questions, you can always type your questions in the chat box. So later part, once I'm done with the slides, I will try my level best to answer as many questions as possible and to enlighten your, your issues. So now, so I've already explained on wages in section 2 and wages in first schedule. So what I would like to do now is to run through the process. How do we determine what is the 4,000? Remember, EA says that an employee earning up to 4,000, and if they are a manual worker or if they are supervising a manual worker, they are entitled to overtime, retirement benefits. If they work on public holiday, they are entitled to the public holiday pay of times 2, times 3. Now, in order to do that, we first have to determine who is entitled to that. So that's why you look at wages in first schedule and then in section 2. So to determine the 4,000, right, we need to look at the yellow box, wages in first schedule. It says that for the purpose of this schedule, which schedule? The first schedule. To determine the wages in first schedule, wages means wages defined in section 2, which is on the left-hand side, but does not include commission, subsistence allowance, and overtime payment. So that means it includes everything in section 2, what you see on the left-hand side, but does not include commission, subsistence allowance, and overtime payment. So for ease of understanding, I've combined these two into one table. So in order to determine who is entitled to overtime, who is entitled to public holiday pay when they work on public holiday, who is entitled to rest day pay when they work on rest day, who is entitled to termination benefit. Many of you all know it as 4,000, right? So how do we determine this 4,000? That is, so you only take the first line, which is basic wages, and all other payments, in cash, payable to an employee for work done. But you exclude all the others, right? You exclude the value of house accommodation or supply of food, for example. You exclude payment to pension fund. You exclude traveling allowance. We exclude any other payments, right, paid to an employee because they've incurred expenses to get their job done. So we remove that. We don't include gratuity payment, right? If you terminate them or if you retire them. We don't include bonuses, annual bonuses, or any part of the bonuses. We don't include commission. We don't include subsistence allowance. We don't include overtime. So all these items are excluded. So we only take item number 1. So now you can see somewhere at the bottom, right, subsistence allowance. What exactly is the meaning of subsistence allowance? Unfortunately, Employment Act, under the definitions part, this was not defined, right? What is subsistence allowance? Definition not given. So when we look at the dictionary, what exactly is subsistence allowance? It says that money that is given in advance to an employee to buy food, clothing, or pay for any other necessities while waiting for their first pay. The other definition given is when you pay money to an employee to cover expenses that he or she may incur in order to perform the job, right? So that is called subsistence allowance. So do seek guidance from the Labour Office. If you are giving some allowances for this purpose, but you're not sure whether should you include these allowances or should you not include allowances. So please get guidance. Now, I've mentioned just now on traveling and transport. Are they the same? Sounds the same, but they're not the same. Now, and I think sometimes we may use these terminologies interchangeably. Instead of calling it traveling, we call it transport. Transport, we call it traveling. Now, it is not the same, right? So transport allowance, typically we give a transport allowance as a fixed sum every month. But traveling allowance, right, it is the basis of traveling allowance, they perform the travel, then you pay them, right? That is called traveling allowance. That is why if you look into the 4X that I mentioned just now, EPF, SOCSO, income tax, and so on, I didn't put HRDF, but I think HRDF is the same as well. Why traveling is excluded? Because it is an expense. That money that you pay them as a traveling allowance, it does not go into their pocket as a profit. They got to pay for the travel. Therefore, the company reimburses them. That is why it is not called an income. It is an expense. Whereas a transport allowance, when when we pay a fixed transport allowance every month, 500 ringgit transport allowance. Now, this employee may not be traveling. He might be walking to work. He may take LRT to work, or his brother may drop him at work, right? So there's no idea whether this guy is really, incurring the expense. So, and sometimes we do it because we want it to be easy. Every month in payroll, I just pay 500. Whether you use, don't use, whether more or less, I pay 500. That is called transport, right? I would encourage all of you all to review the labels that you use. Are you using the right label if you're giving out a traveling allowance? Or if you're calling it transport allowance, is it used correctly? If not, please get clarification, get some guidance, and rectify it. What you don't want is tomorrow an employee, suddenly says that I'm getting this allowance. Why is this allowance not included into ORP? During good times, employees are good friends, but when things become nasty, they will start looking to all this. And at that time, if you want to start reviewing this and you want to rectify, can you rectify for all employees? Can you recalculate back for the last 12 months? And remember this, if it's overtime, can you calculate OT for all the employees for the last 6 months to 12 months? Now, if you can't do that, then please get it checked. If you're doing it incorrectly, please get it rectified ASAP. Speak to the Labour Office for guidance. I'm sure they'll be much more than helpful to give you, further clarification on this. So now remember this. So just now I was mentioning, how do we determine the 4,000 ringgit, right? So we look at first schedule, and then we look at second schedule. Section 2. So now I'm just going to give you a small exercise after this. These particular slides can be still confusing, which is fine, because if you're seeing this for the very first time, it can be confusing. In fact, when I was learning many, many years ago, I was very confused. It took me some time to really understand, what is first schedule, what is, section 2, when you combine it, etc. Over a period of time, you will have better understanding, right? So there's 2 steps to look at. The first step is to determine who are those eligible for overtime, right? If I would ask you this question, ladies and gentlemen, can you tell me who is eligible for overtime? Now, you would say, below 4,000. Above 4 not entitled, below 4 they are entitled. But I can tell, I will say this to you, that statement is incomplete, right? Who are not entitled to overtime? Number 1, who are above 4. And they are not manual workers. And they are not supervising manual workers. They are not managing or handling any mechanically propelled vehicle. So in other words, right, if you have a lorry driver, right, listen carefully. If you have a lorry driver, he's driving lorry the whole day. His job is entirely driving lorry. If this lorry driver is earning 7,000, would he or she be entitled to overtime? Because the common statement people say, above 4, no OT. What if I have a lorry driver earning 4,000 ringgit? Would he or she be entitled to overtime? Anyone? Just give me a yes or no. So at least I know you know what you're saying. What do you think? Is there a yes or a no? A lorry driver earning 7,000 ringgit a month, would he or she be entitled to overtime? Yes. Answer is yes. Why? Because they are also a manual worker. So that is why if your statement is above 4, no OT, please get your statement checked, right? Because that is an incomplete statement. So how do we determine? So first step is, read the first schedule and then section 2. That's the first part. So step 2, let's put it aside. So now I've got 100 employees in front of me right now, and I want to know who is eligible for overtime. So that is part 1, which is first schedule and combine it with definition in section 2. So which is what this table is, right? So when I combine, it says that in order to determine who is entitled to overtime, I only have to look at the first line, which is basic wages, and all other payments in cash payable to an employee for work done. So now I'm going to take you to the next table, right? So 4 illustrations. So you got 4 examples here. The first example, the basic salary or the basic wages is 4,000, no allowances, no commission, no OT, right? The total wages is 4,000. Would he be eligible? Answer is yes. What about second schedule? Basic wages 2,005, allowances 1,2. He gets an overtime, right? His basic wages, the wages for his case, no OT here. So therefore 3,007, therefore he's eligible for overtime. What about illustration number 3? Basic wages or basic salary is 3,800, allowances 1,500. Do we include commission? Answer is no, right? So he earns 3,950. So this employee would be eligible for overtime. Illustration number 4, he or she earns 3,800, allowances 300. So when we include this, now this is transport allowance, not traveling. So when we include this, earns 4,001, therefore he or she will not be eligible for overtime. So this is how you do. So now I have determined employee 1, 2, and 3 is eligible for overtime, employee 4 is no. So I've done the first part. So once I've done that, now in order to calculate OT, I use only definition of wages in section 2, right? Which is the bottom part of part 1, right? You only do that. So in order to calculate overtime, right? In order to calculate OT, I only need to, I need to take into account everything, all the payments, except A, B, C, D, E, F, in order to calculate overtime, right? So I hope you've got it, you've got a better understanding of this. So hourly rate of pay and ordinary rate of pay, HRP, ORP. Most of us, we know this. When we say ORP, right, what exactly is ORP? So ORP is ordinary rate of pay and HRP is hourly. So ORP is 1 day, right? 1 day rate of pay. And how do we calculate per hour? That is called HRP. So in order to calculate ORP, you take the monthly rate and then you divide 26. So when we say monthly rate is your wages, right? Monthly wages divide 26. HRP, once you've got your 1 day rate, then you divide normal hours of work. So if the employee is working 7.5 hours, you divide 7.5. If the employee is working 8 hours, you divide 8. When you combine this, so you get a monthly rate of pay, divide 26 times 8. So I believe most of you refer to the HRP as ORP, but that's fine, right? Terminology issue, but you're right. It's okay. So to calculate 1 hour pay, remember when we said employee perform OT, so we take the HRP, multiply by 1.5 or 2.0 or 1.0, depending on, when they work the extra hours. So in this case, the assumption is the basic hours is 8 hours. But if the basic hours is 7.5, you divide 7.5. Now, I would like to ask all of you all this. Can we divide 9? If an employee works 9 hours, he's at office for 10 hours a day, minus lunch 1 hour, 9 hours of work. Can we divide 9? That means we take monthly rate of pay, divide 26 times 9. Can I apply 9 hours here? Yes or no? Anyone? If the employee works 9 hours per day, can I, divide 26 times 8? Or should I use 26 times 9? Okay? The maximum you can use is 8. Now, let's say I want to use a formula. Instead of using 26 times 8, can I use 22 times 8? Or 25 times 8? My employee only works 22 days a month. Can I use 22 times 8? Yes, no, anyone? I can't use 9 because it's above what EA says. But can I use, right? Okay, answer is yes. You can. Why? Because when you do your calculation, so I would encourage you all, if you have time after this call, after this webinar, you take 2 formulas. The first formula, 26 times 8. The other formula, 22 times 8. So when you use 22, the output of your formula is much more higher. Am I right? It's much more higher. So when the denominator is bigger, the output is much more higher. So you are paying them more than what Employment Act says. Now, Employment Act always says this, you can use any other formula, but it cannot be less favorable than what is given here. So you want to use 22, can. You're making it more favorable, you're paying them more. Just like annual leave. EA says annual leave 8 days. But some of you would be giving employees 10 days, 12 days, 14 days. Why? Because you are giving more than what EA says. So Section 7 says you can give more, but you cannot give less. You can pay more, but you cannot pay less. So if you want to use 22, you can do that. But once you start using it, it becomes an implied term. And if let's say during bad times, you want to reduce it, it's going to be tough. So my advice to companies is always this. It's good to be ambitious, but sometimes you must ask yourself, can this approach be sustainable? If you can guarantee you can pay using this, better formula, even during bad times, business that you can still pay, go ahead. But we cannot take this approach. During good times, we pay higher, and bad times, can I reduce it back? Answer is going to be difficult, right? So if it's not sustainable, do you even want to start it? But if you're very sure you can pay more favorable rates, even during bad times, go ahead. This is one challenge I see in a few companies that has, contacted us saying that, we can't afford it anymore. Can we reduce it? But you've been paying this over the years, right? So don't be ambitious if you cannot guarantee this, permanently. So ORP, when we look at ORP, right, and this is from Section 60IA, states the below, ORP means, ordinary rate of pay means wages defined in Section 2, right, whether you calculate monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, piece rated, or any other mechanism that the employee is entitled to, but it does not include, right, it does not include any approved incentive payment scheme. Now, this payment scheme, not your management approver, not your MD approved or your board approved. This must be approved by the Labour Director General, not by the company. You all may have an incentive plan. Okay, you all do this, this incentive is paid. Here, it refers to any incentive plan that is approved by the Labour Department. So, if it's an approved incentive plan by Labour Department and payment for work done on rest day. So, do you all know, right? Do you all know that when you compute ORP, right? When you can compute ORP, if the employee is working on their rest day, maybe you pay some special shift allowance that you do not need to include in ORP, right? So in Section 2, what is included? Let's go through. But before that, any payment on public holiday is also excluded from ORP. But if you want to pay, it's fine, right? You want to make it more favorable, it's fine. So let's look at wages in Section 2. In Section 2, it says that work done on rest day, it's wages. Public holiday is wages. Approved incentive plan is wages, right? Allowances, wages, commission. So traveling allowance is not. So you can see down there, traveling allowance is not wages. But when we compute ORP, work done on rest day, you can exclude it. Work done on public holiday, you can exclude it. Approved incentive plan, which is approved by the Labour DG, not your bosses, not your management, your board, right? If it's approved by Labour DG, that can be excluded. But allowances has got to be included, commission has got to be included, handphone or mobile allowance, transport. So these 4 items must be included. Traveling, of course, we already know that it is excluded. So if you're not sure, then this is the first time, but please get it. Read it up, learn it up. I would encourage, HR practitioners this. Don't always listen to what somebody else say, right? How do you know they're telling you the truth? How do you know I'm telling you the truth, right? The best way to learn is, yes, listen, but after listening, investigate for yourself. Do your own independent research. Open up EA. Is it true or not that Section 60 IA says that, all this can be excluded, right? And then take the next step. So this is computing ordinary rate of pay. And when you calculate hourly rate of pay, right, do I divide 8? Do I divide 7.5? So if your employees are working 6 days a week, 7.5 hours a day, then you divide 7.5. If the employee is working only 5 days and they're working 8 hours per day, because 8 hours still okay, 8 times 5 is 40 hours. EA says what? maximum is 45 hours. So if the employee is working 8 hours per day, 5 days a week, you divide 8. If the employee is working 5.5 days, the first 5 days is 8 hours. The last day of the week on Saturday, for example, they only work 4 hours, you still divide 8. So that's what this table, this table is for. Okay, so you must know when should you divide 8, when should you divide 9, no dividing 9, sorry. When should you divide 8, when should you divide using 7.5, right? Now, you can use any other formula so long as the output of the formula is not less than this formula. You can pay more, but you cannot pay less, right? So now, I always want to encourage HR practitioners this. When we draft the employment contract, be careful when we use the word including break, excluding break, unpaid break, paid break. So when we say that your work hours is 9 hours, including lunch, what are we telling them? Is lunch included in the calculation of hours of work, or lunch is excluded? So we all know EA's provision of work hours says that any hours that the workers are not working, that means they're away, right, for their own personal leisure, etc., they go for lunch in a coffee shop, that is not work hours. But if you have defined saying that your work hours includes lunch, what is the message you are trying to give them? Or when we say your work hours excludes lunch. So of course we can argue, hey, lunch, you're not working, etc. But for me, I'll always take a much more careful approach to even avoid confusion and doubt, right? Why even get into confusion? So make your statement clear. I would encourage you to phrase your statement saying that your work hours is 9 to 6 or 9 to whatever the hours is, excluding 1 hour lunch, right? Because some companies in shift work, they even pay for OT. Even the short breaks they pay, lunch break they pay, right? So to avoid confusion, make your statement or make your provisions clear. Some people do ask, off day, right? We know if an employee works on a normal day. So let's say if I were to take the work hours, the work days, Monday to Sunday, right? Today is Monday. Some of you all, this is your first day of the week. So Monday, we work until, let's say the week, 7 days, right? Monday until Sunday. So when the employee works on normal day, so let's assume Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 5 days. These are normal days, right? Now, if I work on the day number 6, that is called off day. Day number 7 is called rest day. So, but normal days, after my normal hours of work, if I were to perform OT, and if I'm eligible for OT, the company has got to pay me HRP times 1.5, right? Just now we did the HRP formula, right? So times 1.5. If it's off day, also 1.5. So you'll be wondering why 1.5 off day? Why is rest day 1.0? So rest day, the first 8 hours is 1.0. Why is rest day 1.0? But off day is 1.5. Why is off day more favorable? Right? Some of you may have this question. Do you have this question? Why off day is more favorable? Right? Do you understand why is off day why is off day 1.5 and not 1.0 as a rest day? Because off day and rest day is not the same. Right? I'll explain my next slide. So on an off day, on a Saturday, for example, which is not a work day, but the employee is asked to come to work, so he or she comes to work, and after working, the first 8 hours, let's say if your basic hours is 8, they got to be paid 1.5. If they continue working after the normal hours, you still got to pay at the rate of HRP times 1.5. But on a rest day, assuming Sunday is a rest day, the first 8 hours is 1.0. Let's say they work, the first 8 hours is 1.0. The subsequent 4 hours is 2.0. On a public holiday, the first 8 hours is 2.0 and the next 4 hours is 3.0. Right? Max is 12 hours. So can an employee work more than 12 hours? Answer is no. The maximum work hours allowed in a day is 12 hours. If there's a lunch, it can be 13, but the work hours remains 12. Now, this is why, right, some of us, we may not know this, the concept of rest day and off day. The design of Employment Act is 6 days work, right? The design of Employment Act. So if it's going to be, let me just show you my hands, right? The design is 6 days work. let's say if it's Monday, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sorry, 7 days work. So 7 days work. Now, because we choose to work 5 days, right? By right, the work is 6 days, but we choose to work only 5 days. So what do we call this day number 6? It's either work day or off day, a rest day. So what is this? Because they are not working, but it's still a work day, but they're not working because you said no need to work. So that becomes an off day. There's only one rest day in a week, right? There's only one rest day. So, but as far as law is concerned, Saturday, it is still a work day, if it's a 6 days work, but because they don't work, they're on off. It's not a rest day. In 1 week, there is only one rest day, but you can have more than one off day. So in semiconductor, they work, in a week of 7 days, they work 4 days, and 3 days they're not working. So for those cases, 4 days work, 2 days of off, and one rest day. Rest day is only one. So because Saturday is also a work day, that is why it is 1.5. Right? So section 59(1) says that on a rest day, right, rest day, every employee shall be allowed in each week means one, a rest day for the whole week, right? Now, if there's more than one rest day, then the last day shall be the rest day. So if let's say they are working, they only work 5 days, 2 days they are not working. So the day number 7 is the rest day, the day number 6 is the off day. Is this something new to any one of you? Yes, no? First time hearing this? Okay, so let me move on. Now, what is the maximum overtime? Right? Maximum overtime allowed is 104. Why 104? In a month, 26 normal days times 4, it is 104. So in 1 day, the maximum OT hours is 4. So 26 times 4 is 104. Now, can the company exceed 104? For some reasons, your operating model requires employees to work beyond 104 hours. Now, this 104, it's only normal days. Saturday, if it's going to be a Sunday, which is a rest day, a rest day and a public holiday, they can exceed 104. Because why? Rest day and public holiday, it is not taken to account in the 104. So they can work 104 hours normal days, they can work on Saturdays, they can work public holidays. Why? Rest days and public holidays are not included in the 104, right? Because why? That is not called overtime in the first place. So can employees, or can you exceed the 104? You can, with approval via borang E, to, it says that melebihi had kerja lebih masa. So if there is a reason for your company, there's a need for you to ask employees to perform beyond 104, you have to apply for the exemption, or shall I say apply to exceed 104, right? So this comes from the limitation of overtime regulations 1980, which states that the maximum OT hours, right, the limit of overtime for the work hours purposes shall be a total of 104 hours in any 1 month, right? You cannot exceed 104. So if there's a need to exceed, then please apply for permission, right, via borang E. Okay, remember just now I mentioned this. Who's entitled to overtime? Now, if I would ask some of you all, you may say 4,000 and above, no OT. Now, this is much more detailed way to explain. So we have got two categories of employees. Number one is employees who are engaged in manual labor, because today, with the amendment that has taken place 2023, all employees, as long as the person has got a contract of service, you gave them an employment contract, they are part of Employment Act now. Unlike in the past, 2000 and below, yes, the rest no. So even your CEO, if he's an employee and is paid even 50,000 a month, he is also entitled to, he's also covered under Employment Act. But, right, everybody's covered, but employees who is in the red box, right, those people in the red box, there are 6 provisions that is not applicable to them. So one of it is overtime. So what are those items, 6 items? Overtime, the red box, not eligible or not entitled. Termination benefit, no. If they work on a rest day, the rest day pay, no. If they work on a public holiday, the ×2, ×3, no, right? So these are some of the items that is excluded for those employees in the red box. So who's in the red box? If the employee is a manual labor, right? If you want to know what is manual labor, later part, you get these slides. There's a article, two articles, one is from Donovan and it's a good article, read it. They give some explanation. Who is a manual labor, who is not a manual labor. So if the employee, for example, a lorry driver is a manual labor, but a pilot, right, who operates the aeroplane, he is not a manual labor, right? To know more, please read the link. So a manual labor and those who are operating or they maintain any mechanically propelled vehicle, or if this person or this employee is supervising or oversee another employee engaged in manual labor. For example, your supervisors who jaga operators, right? This group, right, on the left-hand side, this group, it does not matter whether they're earning below 4 or above 4. A lorry driver earning 7, he's in the green box on the left-hand side, right? So this group, they are eligible for overtime, irrespective of their salary. So if you have a lorry driver earning 15,000, he is also eligible for overtime, right? So that is because why? He's a manual labor, so it doesn't matter whether he's earning below 4 or above 4, he's eligible for overtime. But other employees, for example, your HR manager, HR exec, finance exec, a planning officer, of course, purchasing director, your CEO, you have got, let's say, an equipment engineer, you've got a maintenance engineer, you've got, sales exec, right? These people are other employees. So for people who are considered other employees, right? In other words, they are not manual labor, they are here. They are not operating mechanically propelled vehicle, they are other employees. They are not supervising or overseeing another employee in manual labor, they are others. So whoever is others, right? If they're earning up to 4, that means up to 4,000, they are in the green box, they are eligible for overtime. But those people who are earning above 4 and they are not in the other category, they are not entitled, right? So let me give you three questions. Answer me yes or no. So my colleagues here will share me your input. HR manager, right? HR manager earning 3,008, red box or green box? HR manager earning 3,008, red box or green box? HR manager, red or green? Anyone? Okay, HR manager, yes, is green. We don't look at titles, right? We look at no titles. Here is pay, right? So HR manager is green. So even though it's called a manager, but because he's earning below 4, right, he's eligible for overtime. What about a clerk, a finance clerk earning 5,000, red or green? A finance clerk, they do all the data entry, they do accounting, right? They do double bookkeeping, make sure all the payments are recorded. So a finance clerk, red or green? Okay, finance clerk is red, right? What about an operations director? Operations director earning, right, the wages, 3,700. Operations director, a director. Some of your company director, they are also employees. They are paid 3,007. Red or green? Are they eligible for overtime or not? Okay, answer is yes. Operations director could be a shareholder as well, but they have a contract of employment. They have a contract of service. They are earning 3,008. They are also eligible for overtime, right? So please learn more. Okay, so hours of work, you all know that the hours of work maximum is 45 hours. I think this understood. And one of the very important point is an employee should not work more than 5 hours without a minimum break of 30 minutes. So every 5 hours, you must give them a 30-minute break. If it's less than 30, then there's no break hours there. In other words, if you give them a break of 20 hours, then the work hour continues. There's no break. So it has got to be minimum 30 minutes. Not 30 hours, sorry, 30 minutes. Okay, and you see 60A 1D, 1B, the employee cannot work more than 8 hours in one day. So if you wanted to work more than 8 hours in one day, you got to get their consent because the max is 8 hours here. So if you want more, get their consent. So some of you may have pushed it through. Tell them that you got to work 9 hours. 9 hours means 9 hours work, 1 hour lunch, so total 10. So 9 hours, you got to get you got to get their consent. Okay, and so section 18A, which is the new section added in, how do you calculate incomplete wages? For example, the employee joined today. Today is what? Today is the 24th of March. So they start work today. How do you calculate? Or if the employee resigned today, so how do you calculate the salary from the 1st of March to today? You use this formula. So what is the monthly wages? Let's say 3,000 ringgit divided by how many days in the month? So this month we got 31 days. So divide 31. And because he's leaving today, so today is the 24th, so multiply by 24. If he's joining today, so from today till end of 31st, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 8 days, so multiply by 8. Right? So this is for incomplete wages. If it's complete, full month they work, they get a full wages. You don't need this formula. Okay, when do you pay your wages? Right? When do you pay your wages? EA says this, the wages, if you're going to pay them, right, the wages shall be paid no later than the 7th day. That means if for April, if your wages is from 1st to 31st, right, your wage period, you must pay, no later than the 7th of the following month, right? I think you all know this. But if your wage period is 21st to 20th, so your cutoff is different. Some companies cutoff is they follow calendar, 1st to 31st or 1st to 31st, 30th or 31st. But some companies, they follow, for example, 21 to 20, 16 to 15, right? That's okay. But it doesn't matter when your wage period, you must pay no later than the 7 days after the wage period. So if your cutoff is on 21, so 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, by 28 of the month, you got to pay your wages. You can, whereas rest day, public holiday, pay overtime, EA says you can pay no later than the end of the next wage period. That means March OT, some of you all do pay end of March or by the 7th of April, but you can also delay the payment, but must be paid before 30th of April because that is the next wage period. You must pay before 30th. So, but if you ask me personally, I would rather just pay all together and, employer also wants to see money. Sometimes if the month has got public holiday, a lot of public holiday, they earn more money. Sometimes they want to see the money. Now, some of you guys are earning a lot of money. For you, no problem. You can wait. But for the blue-collar employees, the operators, their salary is not much. So 100 ringgit for them is a big money, right? I would encourage companies, improve your internal control, improve your mechanism of how you calculate your OT, etc. If can, pay them in the same period, right? But that's your call. So now, also take note of this. When should you pay wages? For example, if the employee's contract, normal termination, right? The employee resigned. When should you pay? Should you pay the same day, the next day, or end of the month? So section 20 says that it shall be paid no later than the day on which the contract terminates. Not easy, right? You got to pay them on the no later than the day they terminate. But for section 21, this is for termination of contract on special circumstances or breach of contract. The following day, it has got to be paid. So if the contract is being terminated today, tomorrow, you got to pay the wages. Section 21.2 says that termination for special circumstances or breach of contract, but a different section 21.2, it has got to be paid no later than the 3rd day of the month. Right? So do take note of this. And so this is a bit lengthy. I'm just going to summarize it very quickly. So section 22 says about advances. Can I just give as much money as I want as an advance? Answer is no. There are some limitation. So it says that no employer, so you cannot provide an employee, right, during any month, any advance of salary of money, because advance means they've not worked. If they work, they've already earned it. Now they've not worked. They're asking for next month's salary. Can I have the salary in advance, right? You cannot give, right? Let me read this. No employer shall during any 1 month make to an employee an advance, right? Advance or advances of wages which they've not yet earned, which exceeds the aggregate amount to which the employee would earn in the preceding month. So if this month the total wages is 3,000, can I give advance more than 3,000? Answer is no. The max is what I'm going to earn this month. That's what you can give me as an advance, right? So that's what it says. So what is the purpose of the advance? To purchase a house or build a house, improve a house, to purchase a land and many other things, purchase a computer and so on. So you can read this. Now, can I perform a deduction? Can I deduct the salary? So there are three areas to look at. What is allowed? What is allowed with the request of the employee, and what is allowed only with the request of the labor DG. So now what is allowed? If you have made, right, overpayment, you overpaid in the last 3 months, you can deduct. Or if the employee need to pay you notice period, they don't pay, you can deduct. Or if you have made an advance, right, just now remember we spoke about advance, you can deduct. Or if there's any other deduction approved by the law. For example, EPF contribution, per queso contribution, income tax, all these are allowed deductions. Now, the green box, you can also deduct if the employee requests. For example, they become a member of a trade union, right, or a cooperative, you can deduct. Or if they want to buy shares from company shares, you can deduct, provided they request for it. But you can only deduct for item number 3 at the bottom. All these items you can only deduct after obtaining approval from the Labour Director General. There's a form that you got to fill up, submit to Labour. Labour says okay, then you can deduct. For example, deduction. Let me see. Let me just pick one or two. Advance of wages, where you apply interest, right? You tell them I can give you advance, but I will impose an interest. That you require permission from Labour. Or you want to make a payment to a third party on behalf of the employee, then you got to apply for permission. So these items at the bottom, all these items requires you to obtain permission from Labour DG. Even though employee apply, you cannot straight deduct. That is only for green box. So for the blue box, employee must first request, and then you apply for permission from Labour DG. There's a form that you got to fill up, right? So these are lawful deduction. Now, can I deduct, for example, the employee did not serve did not serve notice. Can I deduct the entire sum? Yes, you can, because the limitation is not imposed for indemnity payment. Okay, so lawful deductions. So here you can see under section 24(8, it says that when you make a deduction, it cannot exceed 50% of their wages, except for indemnity. So I mentioned just now, if notice period, you can deduct the entire sum. But otherwise, maximum 50%. So any deduction cannot exceed 50% except for indemnity, or if it's going to be deduction for repayment of housing loan. Subject to, right, again, you see at the bottom, subject to prior permission from the Labour Department to exceed 50%. So you got to take note of what are the payments, what are the advances you can give, what is the maximum, and if you're going to deduct, what deduction can be done, automatically without any permission, what deduction can be done at the request of the employee, what deduction that can be done or can only be done with the written consent from the employee and approval from the Labour DG, right? Do take note of that. So I hope after this webinar, please read more on section 24. Calculation of wages. So wages, incomplete month, divide, remember this is the formula, section 18A. You take, right? So wages, use calendar, calendar. Wages divide calendar, that means divide 30. For this month is 31 days. So wages divide 31 to calculate for incomplete month and unpaid leave. Why unpaid leave? If the employees on a monthly salary, Saturday, Sunday, they all paid for, right? But for ORP and annual leave, right? Why divide 26? Because this is only applicable for normal days of work, not divide 30 for annual leave. People don't apply annual leave on a Sunday. They are on a rest day. No annual leave on rest day, right? They apply annual leave on the 26 days of the month, the working days. Same goes to ORP, because Sunday, it is not an OT on Sunday, right? Sunday is Sunday rate of pay. So ORP, when you say overtime, applies to normal days of work. So how many days, normal days of work in a month? 26 days. So ORP, annual leave, divide 26. But for unpaid leave, incomplete month, divide 30 or 31, depending on the month. Or if it's February, it'll be 28. Okay, my last 1 or 2 slides, then we go for Q&A. Now, also remember this, there's also 3 categories of employees. Full-time, like most of you are full-time. If you work more than 30%, more than 70%, you're full-timer. If you work anywhere between 30% to 70%, you are a part-timer. And if you work less than 30%, you are not employee, not covered under Employment Act. You're considered as casual employees who work less than 30%. And full-time and part-time, the rates are not the same, right? Not the same. You can pay whatever is more favorable, but if you want to pay them, lesser, you cannot go below what the part-time regulation says. So full-time, I think you all are fully aware, but for part-time, right, we follow the employment in bracket part-time employees regulation 2010. So for example, if you can see, if it's a normal OT for part-timers, right, if it's less than 8 hours, 1.0, more than 8 hours, 1.5. Public holiday is the same, 2 and 3. Rest day, you can see there's a slightly different. So right, read this through. Don't have much time to go through. Okay, so that's all the presentation for today. So I'm going to pick some of your questions. I'm going to answer it. But before we go into questions, I would like to encourage all of you all to join our employment law and industrial relations masterclass. I know I'm the trainer for it. Not cheap, 3,002. Good stuff, don't come cheap. Now, this 2 days Power Pack class covers, many of the topics we've discussed today. We talk about fundamentals of EA and IR, how to set up PIP, how do you manage and terminate probationers who cannot perform, in a way that you don't, is in accordance with the law, employees with medical condition, how can you simplify your disciplinary process? How can you, have innovative IR mechanism? How do you do things right? How do you improve employee morale and engagement without pom-pom dance, without nice cozy corner, right? Building your HR fundamentals. What are the amendments to the employment law? So all these are covered in a 2-day masterclass. I would say that if you're a HR practitioner, this is the program that you should join. And of course, if you join, you will get over 120 templates of HR policies, frameworks, letters and so on, and 3 months of support via the WhatsApp group, right? So if you're interested, you can write to Sophie at Malaysia HR Forum for more info. And we also have certification programs. So if you want to upskill yourself, right, you want to be better in the field, because HR has multiple fields. So if you're in L&D, you might want to pursue the Certified Trainee Needs Assessor, CTNA. We have got Certified Strategic HR Manager, Certified Payroll Professional, Certified Com and Ben, right? Not many people are doing it in Malaysia. So we are one of the, probably the one and only one, a Malaysian company doing it. Or Certified HR Professional, Certified HR Business Partner, Certified IR Practitioner, and of course, Certified Recruitment Professional. So if you're interested, all these are HRD Corp claimable. It is done during weekdays, not weekends. And, built by HR Forum, delivered for you, right? If you're interested, do join us. So now, let me pick up some of your questions, right? So 2 things. 1, please join the HR Forum if you have not. Get your team members to join. Get your bosses to join. Sometimes your bosses don't trust you, but they trust me. They trust outsider, but they don't trust you, right? So do join the HR group, HR Forum. And if you're interested to upskill yourself, do join the masterclass or the certification programs. Okay, so let me pick up your question. We got roughly Now it's 4:17. I will stop at 4:35, right? So let me pick up as many as I can.
Someone asked, can they purchase the masterclass book?
Well, the masterclass book, no, you got to come for the class. Even if you see, let me tell you this. Now, that book, if you buy, I don't think you can read and understand by yourself, because the book needs somebody to explain, right? For example, one of the things that I cover in the masterclass, it's I wouldn't call it scientific, but maybe semi-scientific. What is the, a semi-scientific way to extend? In what cases, in what scenario do you extend? Do you extend because the employee has an attitude issue? You're wasting time. Do you extend the probation if they've got aptitude issue? You're wasting money. Do you extend the probation if there's a competency issue? You're wasting your money. We switch off light, not enough to pay all this, right? In what scenario do we extend? Exceptional and deserving cases. What are those? Right? So in the masterclass book, the diagram is there, but you must also have the explanation how to read the diagram, right? So not just giving you the book, you got to join the class. Now remember this, if you read, I hope all of you are reading, you look at all the cases that goes to industrial court. Company loses the case, the award, 1 million, 500,000, 200,000, 80,000, 500,000, 2 million, right? 50,000. Is it worth paying all this money? Just imagine if this happens under your watch, you are the HR guy or you are HR. If this happens under your watch, what is your boss going to tell? My HR guy was incompetent, and because of him, the way things handle, I now have to pay 300,000 ringgit. So if you ask me, spend the 3,000 ringgit to avoid the 300,000 ringgit. Okay, so let me pick up the questions. So yeah, just scroll down. Okay, I won't be able to answer all because there's a lot. Okay, so yeah, stop there. Car allowance, is it equal to transport allowance? I think so, because now try not to create your own labels, right? Because the moment when you create labels and then you realize Employment Act don't have all these labels, then you'll have this question, yes or no, right? So when you create labels, right, when you create benefits, try to align closely to what EA provides. So car allowance, now, in my view, car allowance, I would consider as transport allowance, right? So please get clarity or maybe get further advice from the Labour Office. Okay, there's a question by Devagaran. Can we lump few allowances and term it as other allowances as one payment? The context are to cover travel, meal, and cell phone. Now, if let's say a company wants to just lump all these allowances in, you can, but are you going to include this into ORP? If you can include, so now EA says that traveling allowance is excluded. But if I want to include, can or cannot? Of course, when you include, it is more favorable, no issues. But you can also choose to exclude it. So if this allowance, because what you don't want is tomorrow or one fine day, the employer argues, why is this not included? If you're going to exclude certain things, right? Tomorrow they'll ask you, why is it not included in ORP? Why my OT rate? My OT rate should be higher because of these allowances, but you exclude it, right? If you ask me, number one, and let me tell all of you all this, right? You may not like this statement, but some companies, they've got a lot of allowances, but cheap allowances, right? Or shall I say cheapskate allowances? 10 ringgit, 15 ringgit, 18. Sometimes, you know what? The more allowances you have, the more complex your processes are going to be. So in other words, simplify your allowances. Keep your allowances minimum or minimal, not minimum, sorry. Keep your allowances minimal. That means maybe instead of 5 allowances, 3 allowances. But keep it, how to say it? Competitive. So try to, those allowances you've been paying, every year you pay, it has become an implied term. If you ask me personally, I would say, why not just allow me the base pay, right? Keep only allowances that is a genuine allowance so that your process becomes simple. Now, remember this, when we maintain so many allowances, you are making your payroll process complicated, right? So simplify the allowances. Next, go down. Down. Okay, so if an employee work on off day, Saturday, which is also a public holiday, would it be considered as off day or public holiday pay? That will be considered public holiday pay. Just like if I'm working on a working day, let's say a Monday, right? Now, Monday and Saturday, both are work day. Yeah? So if I work on a if public holiday falls on a Monday or Saturday, it is public holiday pay. Okay. Okay, what about engineers who oversee subcon workers or site supervisors? Now, again, EA says that if you are supervising manual labor, right, you might fall under the green box category. So, Federica, I would encourage you to review your job description and seek further guidance from Labour Office, right? For me, I would consider them to be in the green box. Okay, you know, we are combining all the comments from Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Okay, can we deduct employee's salary for his or her dependent past charge? Okay, remember this. Certain deduction, right? It's already clear, the three types of deduction, right? Deduction that is allowed, deduction that is only allowed if the employee requests for it, and deduction which is allowed with the permission of Labour DG. So Winnie, I don't think this is possible. Please get it checked, right? Please get inputs from Labour Office, right? This has nothing to do with the employee, and you're covering the employment pass, right? This might fall under the category 3. Okay, now this is a very interesting question. I hope all of you will follow this. Can company deduct salary for employees who did not complete the 8 hours? So let's say now the total work hours today or in a normal day is 8 hours, but the employee worked less than 8 hours. So maybe 7 hours or 6 hours, came late to work. Either came late to work or he or she went back early. So 8 jam tak cukup, 6 jam. So can I deduct the 2 hours? Now, I would say that the right label is not deduction, because our wages, right, we are paying for work done. So if the employee is supposed to work 8 hours, but he only works 6 hours in a day, I only pay for the 6 hours. So don't use the word deduction. You are paying for wages earned. You're paying for the hours they work. So 6 hours is what they've earned. The 2 hours they don't earn. So I've seen in some pay slips, they call this as, they don't call it deduction, they call this as unearned wages. So the right label, if you ask me, would be unearned wages, not deduction. So similarly, if an employee comes late to work, don't say deduction. You only pay for the hours he worked. And you got to pay accurately. If he worked for 8 hours, the employees work for 7 hours, 33 minutes, you got to pay for 7 hours, 33 minutes. You cannot pay less. You cannot impose a fine saying that if you come late to work 5 minutes, 30 ringgit deducted. Answer is no. You can only deduct, so-called deduct, the exact sum for that exact hours. You cannot overdo it. So if the employee only works 7 hours and 31 minutes, you must pay 7 hours, 31 minutes. You cannot pay less than that. Scroll down. Okay, so Peggy, just to clarify, non-fixed allowances such as KPI allowance, attendance allowance, calculation formula follows 26 or calendar month. So now, let me answer you this one by one. Non-fixed allowance. Firstly, what are those non-fixed allowance? So that I need to know. KPI allowance and attendance allowance. Now remember all of this, right? All of these are part of wages, except for traveling allowance. So attendance allowance is part of wages, right? Traveling allowance is part of, attendance allowance is part of wages. Your KPI allowance is part of wages. All this will have to be part of ORP. So when you calculate OT, you divide 26, right? I hope I've answered your question. Huh? Now, these slides will be shared to you. We will put it up in Facebook. You can download it later. So you don't need to buy these slides. It's free. Okay. Now, there's a question by, no, it's not a question. It's actually an answer. It's a suggestion. For fairness, Saturday off day, replace on another day. If a PH falls on Saturday, can I replace? It's up to you. right? I think most companies do not replace public holiday that falls on a Saturday, which is an off day, for example. If the public holiday falls on a rest day, the law, EA says you must replace. But off day, you can choose not to replace. But I know some oil and gas company, if it falls on a Saturday, they do replace. So that is, you're making things more favorable. But if you don't want to do it, that's fine. Okay, so based on the working days showed just now, example, the employee works for 6 days and the 7th day, which is a rest day. Can they work on the rest day? Yes, they can. And if the employee works on a rest day upon your request, you got to pay them the rest day rate, right? You got to pay them. Some of y'all, you call it Sunday OT. Okay, that one is terminology, it's a terminology issue. But if they work on a rest day, you got to pay them the rest day rate. Now, should night shift allowance also include an OT? Answer is yes, because night shift allowance, remember this, wages means what? Basic wages and all other payments in cash for work done. So if they come to the shift, right, on a night shift they come, you are paying for the night shift, right? You're paying them allowance. So that has got to be part of ORP to calculate OT. So you got to include, right, OT, into the calculation. So now, attendance allowance, shift allowance, meal allowance, maybe you all got chemical allowance, hardship allowance, all of these allowances and all other allowances except traveling allowance. So all allowances except traveling allowance has got to be included into ORP. I would encourage you all, if you have all these kind of allowances, please make a trip or maybe call up Labour Department to get the guidance from Labour Department. Okay, so scroll down. Okay, employee resign. Should we settle within 1 day, 3 days? 1 day, my friend. Same day. So Rina, you might want to check it out, right? Because there is normal termination. So employees will normally tell you ahead of time, right? I'm going to resign and my last day is going to be on 1st of April. So you know it ahead of time, right? So if you read EA, it says that on the same day, it has got to be paid no later than the day the contract terminates. Okay, so my darling, right? I remember your name very clearly. So my darling, so can we do deduction for the late coming or leave early and call it unearned wages? Now, yes, if they're coming in late, that means there's certain hours they did not perform. So you're not paying for that. Or if they're going to leave early, you're not paying for that. So you only pay for the hours they have worked, right? So the hours they did not work, don't call it deduction because we confuse things. We call that as unearned wages. Yes. So don't quote me for sexual harassment, since I call you darling. Okay. Yep. Let me see. Let me just pick up 1 or 2 more questions. Okay. Can I deduct short notice in lieu of the upcoming salary? So now, when employee do not serve notice period, you can offset the notice period payment from the money they've earned for the month. So let's say, for example, March, right? Today is what? Today is the 20th of March, right? Today is 24. So if my last day is today, so I've earned my salary, probably if I go OT, I've earned my salary in OT from the 1st to the 24th. So this is called the wages earned. I've earned this money. Now, because I'm not going to serve the full notice, I need to give the company 30-day notice, but I'm not giving notice. So the company can deduct the notice period from this money I've earned, right? And this, you don't need permission. You can you can deduct the entire sum. This is under allowable deduction. So yes, you can, right? From the salary. When you say upcoming, I'm not sure why you meant upcoming, because if this is the last month, they're supposed to serve the notice before they go, but because they don't serve the notice or they're not serving the full notice, you can deduct from the wages they've earned. Okay, there's a question by, let me see here. Okay, there's a question by Irene. 45 hours is the maximum working hour per week. For people who work 45 hours for 6 days, that means if they work 6 days, per day is 7.5. 7.5 times 6, 45. They finish work on day number 6. They finish work at 6 p.m. Is it considered off day or work day? See, to me, it's considered work day because why? They started at, they've already worked for, let me see, I do not know what time they start work because you did not mention what time. But let's assume they start work at 8 o'clock. They're supposed to finish work at what time? 4:30, right? Or 5. So because they leave halfway through, they did not complete the entire day, but they leave halfway through. To me, they've worked, but the hours they did not work. So from 2 p.m. until the last hour of the day, that is called the hours not worked. So you don't pay them for that. Can the break of 1 hour be segregated into 15, 30, 15? You can, but remember this, in order to comply with the half an hour break, the minimum 30 minutes break, the break must be 30 minutes or more. So the 15 and 15, I would consider that as part of work hours, but the 30, it's not work hours, right? So to me, you may want to ask yourself, this 15, I think you might be in a, manufacturing environment, you give morning break, then you give lunch break, then you give afternoon break. Yes, for the purpose of 5-hour continuity, right, the 5-hour thingy, it has got to be minimum 30. But you can still have your morning 15 minutes and your afternoon 15 minutes, and you can choose not to pay them for it, right? You can do that. I think some are also doing it. But for the purpose of 5 hours, it has got to be minimum 30 minutes break. Otherwise, then the work hour continues. So let's say now, what if after working 5 hours, the lunch break is only 25 minutes, then they continue work. Then that 25 minutes is disregarded. The law would say that the work hour continues throughout, right? So the minimum break time for lunch, after 5 hours, it has got to be minimum 30 minutes. Okay, so kitchen and housekeeping clerk, above 4,000, are they entitled to OT? Now, when we decide whether they are manual labor or not, right, we don't look at title. Sometimes the title can be misleading. So a supervisor, let me give you an example. Employee A was a supervisor 5 years ago. He was supervising all these operators. But today, he is doing planning and inventory management, right? He does all the stock management. He's no longer managing operators, but the title, his title, right? He's still a supervisor. So should I pay him? So you cannot look at the title. You got to look at their task. What are they doing? So if more than 50% of their time, they are performing manual labor, they are manual laborers, right? Manual worker. But if they are perform the manual part, right? The manual task is less than 50%, they are not manual labor. So, but if I would just look at it from a bird's overview, right? I believe that because you say clerk earning above 4, I would say they are not entitled because they are clerk. Clerk, they are not manual labor. They got to operate a computer. They got to put in data. Sometimes they got to make certain, processes, etc. So I don't think I would not classify them as a manual labor, right? So, whoever's asking this question, because you put it HR, so I would urge you to read the 2 links that I've shared on how to define or how to identify what or who is a manual labor and who is not a manual labor for you to deepen your understanding on this. Okay, so now, Wei Chi, if the staff resign, they got to pay notice because they did not serve full notice, therefore they got to pay in lieu, right? Can HR deduct employee salary without staff consent? Yes, these are all allowed deduction, don't need permission, right? Remember the 3 box? This is part of the first box, you don't need permission from them because this is already provided for. You can deduct and there's no limit for deduction. You can deduct the entire sum if they owe you notice period. Okay, yep. So it is now 4:36. I don't want to hold you guys back. I'm so sorry that I can't answer all questions because time is a factor. So I hope you have benefited, if not a lot, maybe a little bit from this webinar. You can download a copy of these slides in Facebook community. I'll share it in a short while. Now, for those of you all, if you have questions to ask, please ask your questions in Facebook. There are many experienced professionals there, many experienced members there. Many members will happily answer your questions if you have any clarity. But many of these questions that you guys have asked have been already addressed in our Facebook community. So join the group, join the community, go to the search box, type out some keywords. You will find answers to your questions, right? Okay, and I would encourage all of you all to join. The link is given in the chat group. So click the link and join. Get your members to join. Get your team members to join. Get your bosses to join, right? So tomorrow we have another webinar, which is an interesting webinar, 3 hours plus webinar. Thursday, right? Not tomorrow, Thursday. It is called Masterclass Recap. So again, it's a free webinar, right? I will cover a little bit of what is covered in the masterclass. We will talk about public holiday, Section 8, Section 9. We will talk about, part of probation management, PIP. You can ask questions on how do we manage employees with medical condition. We will talk about minimum wages again one more time. We will talk about, grievance management, sexual harassment, how do you manage it? Some of the changes to the law. How do you save costs? Why should you join a masterclass? Because there's so many methods to reduce costs, right? And these methods, probably many of you all have not heard yet, right? Now, some of you all, when you issue disciplinary form, right, show cause letter, until the warning letter is issued, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, I do it in half an hour, right? You do it in 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. I do it in half an hour. How come? Please come to the masterclass, right? So thank you so much for listening in today. So to the Muslim colleagues, our Malay colleagues, Muslim colleagues here, happy breaking of fast later today. And for the rest of you all, have a good day ahead, and do download a copy of these slides. This webinar is recorded, will be live in Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and you can watch it anytime you want, right? So thank you so much, and have a good day.
At HRD Corp, ladies and gentlemen, we are deeply honored to be invited as a strategic partner for this conference. This conference stands as a beacon of innovation and forward thinking, set against the backdrop of a rapidly evolving digital landscape that fundamentally alters how we work, interact, and grow. This systematic shift brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic really have underscored the indispensable role of HR in navigating these changes, making our gathering here today more critical than ever.
And we like number of people yang datang, the event.
It's a very wonderful job done. Even till now, we've been part of many events out in the West and in Europe as well.
Having all this knowledge under one roof over 2 days is really useful.
I think the organizer has been doing a great job so far. I think everything else is good. The traffic is great. Yeah, we did enjoy our time here at the event.
I actually quite salute, with how they organize the whole thing, starting from the registration, everything is quite organized, in sequence, in line. And of course, they provide even food for everyone.
A lot of familiar faces. So dia macam nak satu big reunion macam tu.
If it's on again next year, we will certainly be coming back.
Scene here in KL is outstanding, and we hope to join you guys again in the next event.